Down in St. Petersburg, Florida, a huge urban development deal is in the works, one that could totally redefine the city's future. But to really understand what's at stake, we have to dig a little deeper, uncover the story of the community that was paved over to make it all possible.
Okay, let's just start with a number. $330 million. That is the jaw-dropping estimated market value of a prime piece of city real estate that's right at the center of this entire story.
So, according to an appraisal report from 2023, that massive number is for nearly 77 acres of land, smack dab in the heart of the city's downtown. And this site? It's now primed for a massive new development, a project that's promising to build the St. Petersburg of tomorrow.
But see, this land wasn't always just some empty, high-value lot on a map. No way. Before all the big numbers and the architectural blueprints, it was something else entirely. Something vibrant, alive, and just filled with history. So the real question is, what was here before?
Well, this incredibly valuable land was once the Gasplant district. It was a thriving, largely self-sufficient Black community. We're talking about a real neighborhood. Homes, churches, local businesses, and generations of families who built their lives there.
And the story of how it was erased is really best told by the people who actually lived it. Reverend Watson Haynes II, he remembers the chaos, but what's so powerful about his memory is the strength of that community. Think about it. Even as they were being forced out for so-called economic development, neighbors were literally giving each other their homes, just looking out for one another right up to the very end.
And listen to what Rosalind Graham recalls, the economic heartbeat of the neighborhood. See, this wasn't just a place where people slept. It was a hub of Black entrepreneurship. What's so amazing about these memories is how they paint this picture of a complete, self-sustaining community. You had your local shoe repair, your corner store. Everything was right there.
And then you have this story from Mary Frances Brown Murph, which just shows how the neighborhood gave people real opportunities. A filling station owned by her uncle was where she got her first job when she was just 13 years old, where she learned about sales. It was a community that actively supported and trained its young people.
So how does a place like this just vanish? Well, this timeline shows it wasn't a single event. It was a series of deliberate government actions over decades. First, an interstate literally sliced right through the community. Then, the city officially targeted it for redevelopment. And finally, the construction of a baseball stadium sealed its fate, paving over a neighborhood for what became, for many, many years, just a stadium and its parking lot.
But the erasure of the Gasplant district wasn't some isolated incident. Not at all. It was actually part of a much larger system, one that created the deep economic and racial divides that, frankly, still exist in St. Petersburg today.
And get this wasn't some unwritten rule or a quiet understanding. It was official city policy. The 1931 city charter made segregation the law of the land. The language you see right here is the actual legal foundation for what would happen to communities like the Gasplant. It explicitly ordered the separation of people by race.
And this image, wow, it perfectly illustrates the long-term result. When you look at an aerial map of the city today, you're not just seeing streets and property lines, you're actually seeing the ghost of those old policies, the very parcels of land shaped by decades of segregationist planning.
Now, the source report we're drawing from uses this key term to explain the situation: structural racism. The really important thing to get here is that this isn't about individual people being prejudiced. It's about how entire systems in housing, in economics, and law are set up in a way that produces and maintains racial inequality, often long after the explicitly racist laws are gone.
And here's the proof in the present day. These charts show the lasting impact. What's really striking, especially in the chart on the right, is that even when you control for education, so you're comparing people with the exact same bachelor's degree, a significant income gap between white and Black residents still exists. It's a direct echo of those historical policies.
And that brings us to the absolutely crucial point of wealth. The money you have, not just the money you make. Nationally, the median wealth for Black families is less than 15% of that for white families. When you displace an entire community, you destroy the primary way most American families build wealth over generations, through home ownership. All that equity in those homes, which would have grown for decades, it just vanished for these families.
And this history of economic exclusion isn't just, history. It casts a really long shadow on the city's business practices, even today, right on the very land we've been talking about.
So what is the big plan for this 76-acre site? A massive, mixed-use development. We're talking new homes, offices, shops, and probably a brand new stadium.
It's a huge, ambitious vision for the future of St. Petersburg.
But who actually gets to build that future? Well, a study commissioned by the city just a few years ago found that a staggering 88% of the city's prime contracts went to firms owned by white men. And black-owned firms, they received just 1.6%. It seems that pattern of economic exclusion is still very much a part of the present.
Which brings us right to the central question of this whole story. As the city moves forward with this grand new vision, what exactly is the price of all this progress?
I mean, the contrast could not be more stark. Then, it was a place defined by people, by community, by culture. Now, it's defined by acreage and a dollar amount. This one slide really captures that transformation, from a community to a commodity.
So when those bulldozers moved in, they didn't just clear away buildings. They dismantled an entire social and economic engine. This wasn't just about lost homes. It was about severing a community's ability to build equity, to pass on businesses, to create a foundation of wealth for the next generation, a loss that echoes for decades.
And that leaves us with this final thought. As St. Petersburg, or really any city, plans its gleaming future right on top of a buried past, what is its responsibility to the communities that were sacrificed? The question isn't just if something is owed, but what does that debt even look like? Is it money? Is it creating new opportunities? Or is it just about making sure the memory of what was lost is never, ever forgotten? That's the conversation we need to be having.